morning. Good morning, each and everyone. Those who have found time to be in the sanctuary and those who are watching us live from the comforts of your homes or offices. We want to welcome you to the Golden Ages Ministry today, where we are privileged to have a presentation and a panel discussion on matters finance, that is financial prudence. It's a discussion that I want to believe that all of us will enjoy, and all of us are going to have a pickup point that we will move with in the rest of our lives. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to open this session with a word of prayer. May we all rise, those who are in the sanctuary. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the opportunities that you keep giving us in this life. Thank you for giving us people that, Lord, can always speak words that comes from thee unto us. Today, this morning, the first day of the week, you've allowed us, dear Jesus, to be witnesses and listeners to words that, Lord, we yearn to hear on how we can take care of the little and the much that you've placed in our hands in matters finance. We want to pray for the congregation right here in the church. We want to pray for those who are watching and following this program online, that, Father, your grace, your love may abide with us forever. Take care of the discussants when they will be stepping up. And above all, dear Jesus, allow us to lift your name in all that you've given us, for this our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Let's look at song number 531. 531. As we usher in the discussants to take their positions. We'll build on the rock. We'll build on the rock, the living rock. Let's go. We'll build on the rock, the living rock, on Jesus, the rock of ages. So shall we abide the fearful shock, when loud the tempest rages. We'll build on the rock, we'll build on the rock, on the solid rock. We'll build on the rock, on the solid rock, on Christ the mighty rock. Some build on the sinking sands of life, on visions of earthly treasure. Some build on the waves of sin and strife, of fame and worldly pleasure. We'll build on the rock, we'll build on the rock, we'll build on the rock, on the solid rock, on Christ the mighty rock. Oh, build on the rock forever sure, the firm and the true foundation. Its hope is the hope which shall endure, the hope of our salvation. We'll build on the rock, we'll build on the rock, we'll build on the rock, on the solid rock, on Christ the mighty rock. Thank you. Day by day, song number 532. Song number 532. Day by day, and with each passing moment, let's go. Day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. trusting in my Father's wise bestowment. I've no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly, it's part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every day, the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he fain would bear and cheer me, he whose name is Counselor and Power, the protection of his child and treasure is a charge that on himself he laid. As your days, your strength shall be in measure. This the pledge to me he made. Help me then in every tribulation, so to trust thy promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation, offered me within thy holy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, to take us from our Father's hand, one by one, the days, the moments fleeting, till I reach the promised land. Thank you. All right. We are doing one more song. Song number 520. A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord. A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord. Let's join together. Sorry? A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord. Let's try. A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord, a wonderful Savior to me. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, where rivers of pleasure I see. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand. And covers me there with his hand. A wonderful Savior is Jesus, my Lord. He taketh my burden away. He holdeth me up, and I shall not be moved. He giveth me strength as my day. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand. And covers me there with his hand. With numberless blessings each moment he crowns, and filled with his fullness divine. I sing in my rapture, oh glory to God, for such a Redeemer as mine. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock, that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand, and covers me there with his hand. When clothed in his brightness, transported I rise, to meet him in clouds of the sky. His perfect salvation, his wonderful love, I'll shout with the millions on high. He hideth my in the cleft of the rock, that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand, and covers me there with his hands. All right, 5, 2, 3. My faith has found a resting place. My faith has found a resting place. Let's go. My faith has found a resting place, not in a man-made creed. I trust the ever-living one, that he for me will plead. I need no other evidence, I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died and rose again for me. Enough for me that Jesus saves. This ends my fear and doubt. A sinful soul, I come to him. He will not cast me out. I need no other evidence, I need no other plea. To his blood, I need no other evidence, I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died and rose again for me. The great physician heals the sick, the lost he came to save. For me his precious blood he shed. For me his precious blood he shed. For me his life he gave. I need no other evidence, I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died and rose again for me.
Good morning and welcome to this Financial Prudence Seminar organized by the Golden Age Ministries. We are sincerely glad that you're here. The Bible in many places talks about our financial affairs and the need for prudence in their management. It is God's desire that we shall have understanding both in temporal and spiritual matters. And this is an opportune time to to acquire wisdom from God. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 11 to 18 puts us at the heart of the matter. The verses say, "Beware that you forget not the Lord your God in not keeping his commandments and his judgment and his statutes, which I command you this day. Lest when you have eaten and are full, and has built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought you forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers knew not, that he might humble you, and that he might prove you to do you good at your latter end. And then say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand has gotten me this wealth. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore unto your fathers, as it is this day." This morning, we are joined by a panel of people who've eaten God's manna, as it were. They are experienced, devoted Christians, and each of them has indeed something to offer. They are, in many ways, a beacon of prudence in our church. Let me introduce our panelists for this morning. We are joined by Sister Resper Gogo. Sister Resper is a mother of 6 children, 3 gentlemen and 3 ladies, all adults. She's a grandmother of 3. She holds a master in business administration, strategic management, a bachelor of commerce in accounting. Her career has spanned many decades in finance, HR, logistics, and she has had the opportunity and privilege to sit on numerous boards. She is currently the chair of the Poverty Eradication Network and also sits on the board of the St. John Ambulance. Sister Resper, kindly wave to the audience. My second panelist is none other than Elder Benson Ateng. Elder Benson specifically asked me to say that he is a married man to Sister Micah Ateng for 50 years, actually, and she has been his rock. Together, they have 1 adult son and a granddaughter. He's an economist and has worked for the World Bank for over 30 years. He currently serves as a professor of economics at the Technical University of Kenya. He is a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Kenya and is the current chair of the Board of Directors of the Kenya Institute for Public Policy, Research and Analysis. Elder Benson, kindly wave to the audience. My third panelist today is Elder Michael Oimo. Elder Michael joins us from our sister church, Nairobi South. He has 5 children, and it goes without saying that he's married to 1 wife, a very dear Beryl Oyugi. He has worked in the insurance and financial services sector for 33 years and currently serves as a consultant and a trainer in retirement and pre-retirement. He also serves as a board member at the Homa Bay Water Services Company. Please, Elder Michael, wave to the audience. Thank you. And finally, is for today. Please, Elder Mitoko, kindly wave to the audience. Thank you. We'll begin right away, and I'll begin with Elder Mitoko. When we talk about prudence, when we talk about prudence. What does it mean, and why is prudence important?
Good morning. Before I answer that question, it is the topic we are discussing, financial prudence. I'll give you a little story. The best person that is still financially prudent is our Creator God. If you read the book of Genesis, chapter 1, you see how the Lord planned the creation. He started with the most important. He went to the second until he reached the seventh. And every time he did one day, he reviewed the work. He examined, and he passed a judgment that it was good. When it came to creating the human being, there was a discussion, and everything I'm saying here is going to touch on financial prudence. When he came to the human being, there was a discussion, and the discussion went this way. Let us create a man. How? In our image. And he created male and female in his image. And when he had created the man, he reviewed, he looked, and he found him very good. Why? Because he determined he had made everything available for the man. And when he did the man, he found him very good. Not just good, but very good. This tells us something, that God requires a planning. Financial prudence requires planning. And it's not just planning, but taking trouble to go through each one, determining which one is more important than the other. God, had all the power to create from nothing. For us human beings, we have a chance to plan our working from what God has given us. Then, when he created us, he gave us titles, he gave us things to do. He gave us a job to do. Name every creation that I have done. And that was not easy. But that reflects the part of image that God had given us. To be able to think, to be able to decide, to be able to identify. We were given an opportunity to participate in the project that God himself had planned. Therefore, he planned also that the human being will produce children, populate the world, and we are products of that population. We have been given certain tasks to do. One of those things that we must do in being financially prudent is to know who we are, to know what is expected of us, and to plan to do it. Each time, as our Lord gave us a task to do, he has always given us a way to follow. Even when he sends us out to preach, he gives us the help. The Holy Spirit gives us the strength, gives us the words to say, gives us the strength to do it. All of this is a requirement as we live. Why? Because there is the resources that God has given us. One of those things we must do is to count our blessings, to know what resources we have been given. Yes, to be in a financial, prudent living, you have to know your resources. And what are some of these resources? These resources could be what God has given you, that is being alive, understanding what the world is, and identifying what opportunities you have in life. You need to know that. And some of this you have done by taking a course. My type of work, I'm an accountant, simple. In accountancy, we learn that there are two sides of this living. You have your resources, you have your liabilities. This you must identify and be able to prioritize it, to put the first one first until you reach the last. Just like the Lord planned his creation. So I get that I am a man, I have gone to school, the Lord led me through school, I have a job. I get income. Some of the income, of course, came from God given. Even the land you have was created by God. You may say, I bought it or I inherited it. You inherited it from your parents. So your parents are also a giver of gifts, of benefits to you. Then you will find that now I earn an income. Yes, I have a knowledge, I have a job to do, and when I do that job, I get paid. Now I can add up my resources, and I will have what the accountant says, the asset side of things, the details of things that you have. Some of these things will be those that you have bought, some which you have been given. But you have the knowledge which is given to you by God, and also the strength that is provided to enable you to work. You could get all the resources together, and it is important to identify those resources so that you are sure they will be coming. Once you know the quantity, once you know what your resources are, the economists gave us a system of a common denominator called money. When you get these, you can translate them into money terms. Yes, money helps you now to exchange or to increase and use it for your own living. That is money. Money is not a bad asset to have, but it is bad when you leave it and you don't use it. And my colleagues here will tell you, will go into the details of investing, of keeping money, and how to treat it. That I will not cover. But I'm just talking about the resources that God has given you, your parents have given you, the ones you have earned, and those that are available to you. Sometimes they come as gifts. Sometimes you are lucky to be left to inherit some of that. But whatever comes to you is important. Now, when you have got your resources ready, You have your balance on the left, what we call the assets ready. You must plan also how to use them. Understand that there are certain usages or needs that must be met. Put them in a priority order. Choose which one must come. As a Christian, I suggest to you the first order is returning your tithe, because that is owed to God. It does not belong to you. Think of your tithe, put it aside, because with the payment of that tithe, you are going to get more blessings. So you are actually investing as you put your tithe aside and pay it. Then there are also the offerings and those that you must help. I always say, give God first, because he was the first one to give it to you. The second one is your parents. Make sure they are able to eat and live and feel comfortable. They are the ones that gave you life. They are the ones that looked after you when you were sick, when you were young, took you to school, and they need to have a number 2 position. Once you get that, there are others, small support that you need. But you have yourself to look after. How do you look after yourself? You must eat. You must sleep. You must get medicine when you are sick. You must bathe. You must go to work, transport, and so forth. You see, I did not start with myself. I started with God, my parents, and then I come to myself. And now that I have my money, you can call it US, though it is most of it is given to you by somebody. Once you have it, consider your priority. You have to have a house. You have to eat. You have to dress up. You have to pay transport. And you have to care, of course, your utilities, water, whatnot, and no. Remember 2 things, that it's not just eating, it's just not living. You have other responsibilities. In life, you grow up, and at home, we are told you make a hut to sleep in, and sweeping that house or looking after it requires an additional hand. God gave us, as a man, he gave us women. He gave us sisters that we need to marry. Marriage is a project. It is not something that comes daily. It requires planning. Plan to marry, because God said, man shall not live alone. So don't live alone. When you come to your age, marry. When you marry, God blesses you with children. Those children must go to school. They must be cared for. But they are part of your daily maintenance. You may now say, I need to move out of my home. I need to go and make a good house. That is a project. Whenever there is a project, discussion must be. I would hope that at that time, you already have your wife, you already have your husband. So you need to discuss it as a family and say, I'll go and do this. This is biblical. In Luke 14, verse 28 to 30, Jesus gave us a formula. He says, which man will start to build a house without planning how to finish it? He tells you to plan, then implement, and then finish it. And when it is not finished, people will begin to say, what sort of man is this that cannot do this? Another thing which brings me to savings, which will be discussed by my other colleague here, there is a need to have a saving culture. Save what you don't need immediately. Saving enables you to create a fund for investment, which will enable you to live and look after yourself. When you grow old, you'll find you spend more money on medical than you spend on your eating. Eating becomes routine, but medical becomes new. You will find you have relatives to look after. You'll find you have people depending on you. Of course, you need to be active in the church, in the society, and one thing I've left out is to your government. You have taxes to pay, and those must be paid. And God says, give what belongs to Caesar, and it is there in the Bible. And I believe that in doing all this, you will always find blessings from the Lord, increase in your resources, and better planning in what you do. Plan, budget, execute, review. These are essential steps in living a comfortable or reasonably comfortable Christian life. That is what I wanted to introduce. Of course, there are more coming, but that is my little story. Thank you.
So you can hear plan, budget, execute, review. Elder has told us you not only count your blessing, but you account for your blessing. I just want to jump over to Elder Ateng, and I'll begin with a personal question, if you don't mind. When you look at your life, what are the biggest mistakes you made when it came to money? What were the biggest mistakes you made?
Thank you very much, facilitator. And thanks a lot for inviting us to this discussion. And I also thank Elder Mitoko for giving a very good background that covers all that we are going to talk about. We will be picking on some of the things that he highlighted, and we'll be emphasizing them. Some, for example, how they refer to ourselves, such as the question that he has posed to me. Let me begin by saying that human beings need money. We need money to pay for the things that make life possible, to pay for food, to pay for shelter, to pay for health services, to pay for a good education for your children. But you don't need to be a Bill Gates or to have a lot of money to pay for these things. However, you will need some money until the day that you will die. And that tells you how important this topic is that we are dealing with today. The facilitator asked me to talk about some of the mistakes that I might have made in my life, as well as far as money is concerned. I'm going to answer this question referring to some of the things that I've experienced in my own life, and also referring to some of the things that I have seen happening to people when it comes to the use of money. Many mistakes that people make, and I'm going to share some of them with you as frankly as I can. One of the mistakes that people make is making wrong investment decisions. For example, buying land or buying property that does not have genuine documentation, or buying property or a house that has genuine title deed, but the property is in a riparian area or on a road reserve or in a wetland. Yes, you have the title deed, but your house that you are buying is in a wetland. You are buying it during the dry season, but wait until a time like we have now arrives. Or sometimes when we get money, a bit of money, we think it is a lot of money, we think it will last forever, and then we just become outrightly arrogant. We become haughty. We acquire the feeling of self-importance. So what do? We buy very expensive things. Now, you buy designer clothes, designer shoes, designer bags, everything designer. Now, what else do? You go and buy a very expensive dress, particularly the ladies, a dress that you are going to use on only one occasion. And Elder Mitoko is talking about financial prudence. Is that being prudent? Or sometimes you want to buy a car. A car is good, a car is necessary. But you have just started making some money. You want to use that money to buy high-end car, the most expensive car, because you've seen some of your colleagues in church driving that kind of vehicle. You've seen some of your colleagues at work driving that kind of vehicle, but you do not know how many sources of income they have. Your source of income may only be the salary. These ones might have inherited a lot of money from their parents. Or maybe they have other businesses from which they get income. But you start comparing yourself with them and you look at what can happen to you. Sometimes when you start going on outings, you go for the most expensive outing because that is where you saw Elder Mitoko go. Or that is where you saw your neighbor go. You are comparing yourself with your neighbor, with Elder Mitoko, but you do not know how many sources of income these people have. That's a common mistake that we make when we have money. Another one that I want to share with you is that sometimes we spend money on things that don't have value. Let me give you an example. You have just started working. Young people, you will get, when you graduate from your universities, you will start working. When you start working, you see your colleagues driving cars. You come to church, you see people of your age group driving cars. And now you feel that you also need a car. But the reality is, you don't have the kind of money that they have. You cannot afford to buy the kind of cars that they have. But your ultimate objective is to have a car. What do? You go out there and buy a car for 100,000 shillings. That is what we call a lemon. Lemons don't last long. In the end, you will find yourself spending a lot of money trying to maintain that car. My advice to you is, cheap is not always cheap. It can become very expensive. Another mistake that we make when we get some money is that we start behaving differently. We behave as if we are the only people who matter in the community, in the village. We think that we are the only ones who can take care of all the needs of the people in the village. We are the only ones who can take care of the needs of the people in the community at the expense of our own families. That's a mistake that we make because we want to make a name. I want everybody in the church to know about me. I want everybody in the community to know about me. So I start behaving irresponsibly. What are some of the lessons that we can learn from these mistakes? Don't wait until you make the mistakes and then you learn the lesson. Learn the lesson from the people who have made the mistakes and don't repeat the same mistakes. For example, I talked about buying a house or a property without a proper title deed. Please do due diligence before you put your money in buying any property. Due diligence does not mean that you have a piece of paper like this, a title deed. The piece of paper may not be genuine, but as I said, it may be genuine, but there are other problems associated with the property that you are trying to buy. You saw what happened in Syokimau the other day. Those houses that looked so beautiful, and now you had water up to this level. Even if you are at the top level, how do you get out of the building when the flood is 10 meters high? Sometimes, we think that this happens only in the cities. No, even in the rural areas, these things do happen. For example, I've seen people that have bought some property on a road reserve. They put up a very nice building. And you know what? I don't know why they behave like this. The authorities out there, they see you doing that, they just keep quiet. You start the construction, the building comes up, they know you are doing a wrong thing, you are building on a road reserve, they don't even come to you. They wait until the building is complete. Sometimes they wait until somebody moves in or you start doing business in it. And they come and put a big X in red on the building, telling you the building is condemned. They send you a notice saying, demolish the building by this date. If you don't, we'll come and do it for you and send you a bill. And indeed, they will do that. I've seen that happening even in the rural areas. So what I'm trying to say is that let us be very careful when we buy property. The piece of paper you have is not enough. Do all the necessary due diligence so that you don't make that kind of mistake. Another lesson I've learned here that I've seen also other people make this mistake is that, for example, you are moving into a new house. It may be your own house, or it may be a rented house. You need things like curtains, basic things, curtains for the house. What do people normally do? I look at my friends, the kind of curtains they have. Maybe some of them imported that curtains from Dubai. So I also think I can import curtains from Dubai. But my income is not enough to bring me curtains from Dubai. But because I'm competing with my friends, I forgo other things. I make my family suffer because I want imported curtains from Dubai. What should you do? If you have reasonable amount of money, instead of importing from Dubai, go to Biashara Street. You will get good curtains. But not all of us can afford curtains from Biashara Street. You can also get almost equally good curtains if you just walk across, going to Eastlands, go to Easily. You will get good quality curtains. All that you need is somebody who knows how to make curtains. Go and buy from there, give the person to make for you. When I come to visit you, I will not be able to tell whether your curtains are from Dubai, from Biashara Street, or from Isili. I'm not discouraging people from importing. I'm only saying, sit down, as Elder Mitoko said. Ask yourself, can I afford it? If you can afford imported ones, why not? I'm not discouraging you. What I'm only saying is that sit down, count the cost, and check if that is what you can afford. I don't know whether to end there or to add other things.
No, I think you've spoken very well.
Thank you.
You know, he reminded me, you remember in the videos, somebody said, title deed ni karatasi, shamba ni kujenga. And it just reminded me that in terms of due diligence, be diligent in your investment decisions. I just wanted to ask our audience in the church, any person who's made the mistakes that Elder spoke of, by a show of hands, if you've at least made one of the mistakes, kindly let's see your hand. Any mistakes like that? He's spoken very well about making ego-based decisions as opposed to rational decisions. How important is comparison when we are making financial decisions? It's something to chew upon and to ponder about. At this point, maybe for just about 2 or so minutes, maybe if any of the audience might want to make an addition or contribution or a question to our panel, you're most welcome to do so. Yes, I can see Sister Ochodo, yes?
Thank you very much, elders. These are, what should I call them? Golden words of advice from golden ages.
Yes.
I wish we had had this session a few years back. Elder talked about spending without prudence. And actually, there are mistakes that people make. I think for me and my sister here, who maybe you have children who get married, and then you really struggle those last days, you really struggle up and down, up and down. You are looking for the most beautiful and expensive dress that you can find. And then you get, the dress is beautiful, and on that day you look very smart. But going forward, you find that you cannot really wear it. You will wear it to come to church, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you just remove it. So actually I think, what should I say, with hindsight, what even elders say, you know, we need to analyze, execute, and then review. I think now with the reviewing, people need to learn that actually you can get yourself a very nice outfit or something for that day, but something that you can use going forward. You can wear it to church, you can wear it when you're going somewhere, when you go to the village for a function, it's all that. So I think it is important that we need to know how we plan our purchases, because there are certain purchases that are not prudent at all. Thank you very much.
Amen. Amen. Any other person who'd like to say something? I can see Elder Ogari.
Hello. Morning. Thank you so much. I want to share an experience from what elders talked about. Due diligence. When I was a very young man, just graduated from the university after having worked for 2 years, I was excited to own a piece of land. So there was a society in Kisumu. They were selling pieces of land. So being very new and with no experience, I decided to just engage somebody without doing due diligence. I was given some paper that I'm a society member. I was registered as a member of that society. Little did I know that the number I was given, the membership number, was already somebody's number. So when I got some small money, I started looking for posts to go on the fence. So the moment I started engaging workers, then somebody came up that this is my piece of land. Already I'd spent 150,000. It was a very painful experience. We only to find that these people were con men. The way people have been conned here also in Nairobi. So I lost money. And I was paying loan for that mistake which I did. I never bothered to know whether that society was a genuine group. And up to now, it taught me a lesson that anything I want to do, I must do due diligence. Thank you so much.
Amen. Let's go back to our panelists. And I'll take it with Sister Resper. Just speaking from Elder Ateng's presentation on his mistakes. You're a counseling psychologist. So I want to pick you up on money in the family. Is money an important issue in the family?
Thank you, Brother Joseph, and good morning, everyone. This is a topic that we all know we are just touching at the surface, because each session can actually be a whole day's seminar. And therefore, we'll just speak on a few pertinent things that summarize, and hopefully, if in future we want to go into details in a certain area, we'll do so. Money is important. I think many people have treated it like an evil we have to live with. But I think Timothy reminds us, 1 Timothy chapter 6:10 reminds us that it is the love of money. And unfortunately, the society today loves money. And because of that love of money, we have a lot of conflicts in the family. Is there enough money in the family? It's never enough. Because we know from the creation in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were given everything. And yet, when the devil came, they still saw, there's this tree we are not eating from. How comes? And the devil was very quick to point to them, no, you can eat from that tree. So that in itself has created us as humanity, a people who would never be satisfied. I have 5 shillings today, I want 10. When you are struggling and you say, if I get a promotion, you get a promotion, your promotion goes up 30%, or you change jobs and you have a 50% salary increase, your expenditure goes by 100%. So that is who we are as human beings. Money is never enough. But there is a need for money because even spreading the gospel, you need funds to preach the word of God. So therefore, there is a need for money, but we also recognize that it is our human nature to make it that money is a challenge and is a conflict in families. It is never going to be adequate, and therefore we have to find a way of how do we deal or minimize these conflicts in families about money. Why do we have conflicts in the family today? Remember, historically, at some point in the past, this was not a money economy. People lived by just exchanging goods. But today, the culture has changed. We have now working class women and men. And in some of the cases, women are earning even more. The professional ladies are earning more than their husbands. And this tends to be a challenge because the traditional role as we have known it, the man is the head of the home. And sometimes money very quickly makes us feel the importance of being the ones who are supplying. And therefore, you'll find money becomes a bond. Instead of a blessing to a family who are both working husband and wife, it becomes a bond of contention. And therefore, what we want to share today is how can we as Christians try to minimize this issue of money that is actually contributing, because research shows between infidelity and finances, these two contribute to over 60% of the divorces and separations in family. And in fact, money or finances become number 2 to infidelity. And we all know and are aware, even in our Christian homes, the rate of divorce, the rate of separation, or even separated or divorced people in quotes living under one roof because of the differences they have on money. So let's quickly look at what are some of the causes that bring conflict of money in the family today. Let's remember, when we are getting together as a couple, you've come from different homes, different backgrounds. One may have come from a family whereby there was scarcity of money, whether physical or mental. People just feel there's scarcity. There's another family where the other person was coming from a level of extravagance. Even twins do not necessarily share the same ideas. And therefore, we are cobbling together two people with a very different approach to dealing with money. So that in itself needs to be worked upon, because you two people have to find out what works for one may not necessarily work for the other. Because you are getting into a relationship where somebody has grown up for 20 years or whatever, handling money differently, so is the other spouse that comes with there. And then we also know we have personality traits. There are people who are introverts, there are people who are extroverts. The extroverts derive strength from being out with others and enjoying the space of others. Obviously, in today's life, you cannot be out on nothing. The introvert derives their strength from just being in the house or being alone in their own space. And somehow, life being what it is, these two people get together as husband and wife. You can imagine the kind of challenge there is in this couple now. One wants to be out enjoying, the other one wants to be in, not enjoying. Already that can be a source of conflict. Then, again, as we are saying, women are now earning a lot of money, as I mentioned. How do they deal with this position of the man in the house as the head of the house? Sometimes the man is retrenched, even if when he was having money, and now they have to rely on the wife's salary. Now, one of the other things that is difficult or creates a challenge in marriages is the lack of discussion about money matters or finance matters in the home. Sometimes even some go through premarital counseling, others don't. And even when they are courting in friendship, there's this misconception, I'll deal with that when we are in the house. I will enforce my belief or value systems on my spouse, and this is how I'll make them spend their money or do their money. It doesn't work. You come to realize later on that because you did not address this issue, earlier on it becomes a problem in the family. Even for those who go through financial planning or counseling in the church system, a lot of churches do not know how to talk about money. A lot of the time they'll bring out very strongly the spiritual aspect of marriage and family, and they do not bring out the money aspect. And people get together and they become surprised when they realize that they did not tackle the money issues before they got married. And then we are also looking that many families, part of what makes it very difficult to deal with money is we do not have clear goals, clear focused goals. And I want to emphasize this because if as a family, you know where you want to go and what you want to do, then you know you'll be dealing with your finances as they fit into the goals that you want to achieve as a family. So because people do not define the goals, or each person comes into this marriage or family with very different expectations, then you find there is a conflict in the family over money and financial matters. So what are some of the conflicts? Because again, as I mentioned, it's not easy to cover everything, but I'll just pick some of the critical ones, and others, of course, we experience them as we live our day-to-day life. It starts even from how do we get our income? What is my wife doing? Is she going to be a business person and me I'm working, or vice versa? Who works and where? Because sometimes you are working, your job requires you to be in Kisumu, the other person is going in a job in Mombasa. How do we balance this as a family? And if not well discussed, it becomes a source of conflict. How much do we earn? My goodness, you talk to couples, and it is a secret. Okay. People hide their pay slips at the place of work in their drawers, because if they don't want the spouse to maybe go through the clothes and see the pay slip and say, my goodness, this guy earns this much money, my wife earns this much money. So the secrecy around money becomes a source of conflict. Bank accounts, what do we want? Do we want a joint account? Do we want separate accounts? Do we want it saving? Do we want it investment? What kind? And every time you're discussing these things, you realize you are all coming from very different places, and it becomes a source of conflict. One source, again, because now we have quite a significant number of working women. Who runs the home? Do we budget jointly or we budget separately? Who runs, what are the family roles that each one wants to take? What kind of investments do we want to embark on? And I think the investment facilitator will share with us. And I want to share just a story on how the secrecy can be a problem, because this is a life case that we had. A husband who loved his wife very much decides he's going to surprise the wife. He goes and buys the plot, builds a house, and takes her, get into the car, honey, let's go. I have a surprise for you. And they go to the place where the house is built, and the wife asks, what is this? He said, this is our new home. And instead of the wife being excited, he says, no, that's not the type of home I'm looking for. And it took quite a while. I don't know whether they finally ended up in that home, but the wife was adamant. She said, if I had participated in this home, that would not have been my kitchen. I would not have wanted my bedroom to face this side. And I know of a couple whereby the husband built a house at home, and the bedroom was facing the family cemetery. And she said, I can't be going home when I open my windows in the morning. I am facing cemeteries of the loved ones who passed away. So you can see a good investment, but because of non-involvement of the other partner, it still creates a problem in the family. How do we distribute this money in the family? A major conflict area. How much do we give to the church? How much do we give to the children? How much do we give to friends? How much do we give to the community projects? Personal allowances, self-advancement, because we all know now we are in that era whereby you finish your first degree, you get married, and you want to take another degree and another degree. How does that work within the family home? And then, how do we deal with family? And I just want to go through the family because you mentioned, very briefly because of time. I'll give 2 examples and then just draw conclusions from there. There's this couple who are my neighbors, husband and wife with 2 sons. And when the mother-in-law would come to visit, I do not know the background of how the mother-in-law had disagreed with the lady. She would stay away and come home late to make sure that when she's coming home, her husband and the children have had their supper, and then she goes to the kitchen to make her own supper, and goes to sleep until the time the mother-in-law will be gone. The maid will say, Leo ameenda. So then now she comes back home. That's what sometimes family challenges can be. Eventually, of course, they still lived as husband and wife, but you can imagine the atmosphere in that kind of home whereby you cannot sit on the table with your mother-in-law and have a discussion. Obviously, in that family, they cannot sit down and budget for what they want to give the mother because there's no discussion. Whatever has happened, so it means the woman is doing her own things and the man is doing his own things. And believe you me, when that does happen, to achieve family goals takes a long time and sometimes does not happen, not because you do not have the resources, but because of the way you are structured and not able to communicate so that you can be able to achieve the family goals that you have. The second example I want to share is a good friend of mine who was a lecturer at the university, a very nice person who liked to enjoy his life. And during that era where people, he would give relatives, and then of course they would go to the university, a seat place, discuss politics, and technically his money was just on two things, relatives and outings with his friends. So really the person who was taking care of the home was the wife. And I think at some point she became so disgusted, she decided to move into a smaller town because the man was really not helping much in the home. So during that era where lecturers were running away to go into exile, he was one of them, and he was out there for 3 years. So when he came back, I asked him, how many of your relatives have died because you are not there to support them? And he told me to honestly, none. The point I was trying to make to him was, you know, your mental state can make you believe that these people are so dependent on you, and yet if you are not there, they still live their life. So what does that mean to us? It means that you do not necessarily deny your relatives what they need to have, but you have also to take care of yourself. Now, in this family, the man was really not taking care of his own wife and his own children. He was busy taking care of other people without discernment, to the extent that actually at the end of the day, it was of disservice, and all the relatives were doing or friends were doing was just to take advantage of his vulnerability and good spirit, and he never built himself because with time, really, other than the ancestral land, he didn't have much to show as a person who had gone through a career and worked. And a lot of the time, many of these people, when they reach retirement and they cannot see what they have worked for, actually end up getting depressed, and many of them cannot live long because they have nothing to live on. And you actually realize now that, you know, the family they neglected also tend to neglect them, and they end up very miserable retirees who cannot manage their lives. And the people they were giving actually don't even sympathize with them. They say, you know, he worked. If he did not know how to take care of himself, tough luck on him. So those are the things that are around families that we need to be careful about. Yes, we need to help. We need to be there for them, but let's also help them from an empowering point of view, help the relatives to make themselves self-sufficient where they can so that they do not become dependents on your income. So, in summary, how do we mitigate this reality in our African cultural system where we know it doesn't have a social system that the government provides, and many people are really struggling to survive? And how do we as Christians manage and help where we can, but at the same time avoiding also ruining ourselves so that we go through our work life, or we go through a life whereby we have made some money and we are not able to cope and prepare ourselves and be good stewards of what God expects us to do. So I'll just pick a few items. We need, again, as I mentioned, very clear goals. When you have clear goals, even when this relative of yours comes to you and tells you, I'm looking for this thing, you know your goal was, I need to have a piece of land because maybe I didn't have land. Give enough to this person who needs a piece of land, who needs your help, but make sure your money for the land continues to be there from whatever income you have. So whenever you have your goals set up, you will be focused on how to go about achieving those goals in the context of what other things you must do with your income. Couples need to build trust. When trust and communication is a topic on its own, but even that communication, even if it means disagreeing, it is better to disagree and move forward, knowing that I do not agree with what you are doing, but I'll take this course of action because we are still family, because the two of you will never agree on everything. But rather than keep quiet, because a lot of the families, what happens, when these things, when they don't agree, somebody goes quietly, as I've said, this one is buying this one here, this one is helping a sister here, this one is helping a brother here, and in the end, you find you are not moving forward. A lot of the time, you find you are not moving forward. A lot of the time, because we are saying, for example, if you look at a family, one person may marry from a rich home, another one from a poor home. What do you do in a case like that? Sit down and discuss on how you want to help these families. My advice occasionally to moms is like, treat your mother-in-law, because your mother-in-law is very suspicious of you. You are a stranger to her home. And you know that her son, mothers and sons, her son, you are taking her son away. One of the tricks that works is, if you agree as a family that you are going to be distributing certain amounts to Nini, be smart and even start with your mother-in-law. Because then when you start with your own mother, she will sit there and say, you know, I'm being brought the remnants. The top cream and everything has gone to her mother. So make sure you reach your mother-in-law and give her whatever she wants, and then go to your own mother. That tends to minimize the conflict and the suspicion mother-in-laws have about their sons. Because like when you look at that, she's still your mother, and I think my elder said here, they are still family. Some families need help more than others. Some do not need help, but there are things that make them happy. Just be able to have a communication space whereby, you know, maybe there is a family, all they need is just a ticket to Mombasa and enjoy. There is a family which needs food on the table. But it is through communication, when you sit down and chat, that you'll be able to find out what works for each of the families. We are all very different, and I think the important thing is to invest in your family to know what works for your spouse. And then, of course, it will be possible that, you know, when you are having some of these things, we need to learn to negotiate. We learn a give and take environment. You cannot have everything you want. Sometimes you need to compromise. Sometimes you need to let other things go, because you still want this family to be a Christian family. When I look at the lady that I gave an example, I kept on saying, my God, may he have mercy, because how on earth can we claim we are Christians when within our own space, there's even no love within our own family? I think it has been mentioned, I cannot overemphasize, budgeting helps. When you budget with your goals in mind, you will know the direction you want to go. My favorite statement is, if you are going to Mombasa, and I meet you on Limuru going downhill towards Kisumu, then your goal is not right. Mombasa doesn't take that route. Mombasa, I should be seeing you towards Machakos. So please make sure your goals are very clear, and you take that journey that is leading you towards your goal. So, in completing, let's be very clear on the roles each member of the family plays, including the children. Let those goals be discussed, let them be shared, And above all, I think I like this statement in Proverbs 23:7. If your goal, like Proverbs says, what a man thinks, so is he. May our thoughts be thoughts which are positive towards our goals, because then we move in the direction of what we are thinking and we apply. Thank you.
So what I hear you've said, quite a number of families hinder their progress by just not being open with each other. Okay, very interesting. There's a statement I just want to pick from the book Adventist Home, and it's on counsels to husbands and wives on matters money. Sister White says, all should learn how to keep accounts. Some neglect this work as non-essential, but this is wrong. All expenses should be accurately stated. There's an interesting statement also coming from that particular book. It says, you must help each other. Do not look upon it as a virtue to hold fast the purse strings, refusing to give your wife money. Women, amen? You should allow your wife a certain sum weekly and should let her do what she pleases with this money. Give your wife a share of the money that you receive. Sister Resper, what's your take on that statement?
Thank you. I think we have to put that statement in the context of what we have today. During her time, I think the wife was a housewife. She was the one taking care of the home. And therefore, if the man did not give her money, she didn't have money. I think in today's context, my reaction will be, it is now a joint effort because that's where we have socially evolved. But we still have housewives. And where we have housewives, her message is just as relevant today as it was then. I know also one of the things I didn't mention is your wife, I guess again I said people are from different backgrounds. Plan and just agree with your wife. What do you need? What does she need for her own needs so that she does not come to you and say, today I want to do my hair. Tomorrow my daughter needs to do this. Tomorrow, agree so that you have a budget for her. And when that money comes, you give her to spend on those items. And some of them even do it when the wife is working or not. So that you are very clear, this is money for this is money for this, and then that family runs. That will be my reaction. I don't know about the other panelists. Thank you.
Any panelists who would like to make an addition? Elder?
Difficult subject. It depends on the two personalities. But the best that works is where, like she says, you ask her how much she needs because discussion is necessary for budgeting. And that sort of money that she wants, if you can afford it, give it to her. If you cannot give it to her, tell her why. Because you have a budget, you have certain standing payments that must be made. She has, you have other things that you must do. Discussion, that she said, is important. But let me tell you, I think some of us cannot really manage the kitchen expenses. Sometimes it is even the home expenses. I tend to forget that certain things must be bought at certain places and how often. So the best thing is to establish a budget for the kitchen. Let the mother run the kitchen. That's what well, it is a way I have hidden myself by telling her, this is you, go ahead and run it. And only when she needs certain equipments, bigger ones and so forth, she will come. but she gets to run it better than I do. That is why I give her, because she's an expert. She knows it. You know, some of us grew up where we were not required in the kitchen. We were not allowed to go and help in the, to the extent that some of us, if they go to the kitchen, you find the cups and glasses falling down, breaking. So you get chased away. They tell you, go out, you'll finish my crockery. So, because I am poor in the kitchen, I only go to say, Mama, I'm about to go, or something like this, just to pass a message. But the housekeeping, including deciding whether the worker in the house is good or bad, I leave to her. And she normally tells me, oh, this worker has become this way. And I said, what do you want to do? So she says, I'm going to look for another one. I said, fine, go ahead. It gives her a role which she likes to do, and you'll find things moving a little better. That's all I can say. I'm not an expert in the home budget, but she does better than I do. I don't know whether you would agree with me or you think I've just run away from the responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Elder. That's very good points of view. We now want to run to the final part of this seminar. And we just want to talk about laying aside for the future and the role of investments. But before we begin that segment, I just want to quote something. It says, money is not necessarily a curse. It is of high value because if rightly appropriated, it can do good in the salvation of souls, in blessing others who are poorer than ourselves. By an improvident and unwise use, money will become a snare to the user. He who employs money to gratify pride and ambition makes it a curse rather than a blessing. Money is a constant test of the affections. Whoever acquires more than is sufficient for his real needs should seek wisdom and grace to know his own heart and to keep his heart diligently, lest he have imaginary wants and become an unfaithful steward, using with prodigality his Lord's entrusted potential. Now, I wish to bring Elder Mike into this discussion, and I just want to begin by asking, how important is it to invest and to lay aside for the future?
Good morning. I believe it is still morning. Good afternoon. I'm told it's afternoon already. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Joseph, for the introduction. But with those over 30 years of working in insurance and financial services sector, I wanted to add that now I'm practicing insurance broker and also a consultant on retirement, pre-retirement, and even post-retirement counseling. I'm also a businessman. Somehow, I'm a director of Mfarusi, which is the insurance broker, and also a director of MOBA, that a bit of property. So when I see you here, I may be seeing some potential customers. But anyway, as Resper said, we may not have time to deal with this, but we'll throw some highlights. And I believe that even amongst us, or even those who are watching us online, we have also people that are equal to the task. They can talk about investments. But let me start by saying, when we look at Matthew's 25, 14 to 30, it talks about what we all know. The master that went away to the servants. So, what are we saying? One was given 5 talents, another one 2 talents, and another one 1. And what are we seeing in the end? When the master comes back, now they are held to account. So, the one that was given 5 talents said, I took care of it, even invested, now I have 10 talents. The one that was given 2 talents said, my master, now I have 4 talents. And the third one said, I knew who you are. You even want to reap where you did not sow. So I kept it very safely on the ground. I kept it very safely for you. So my master, I knew you demanded when you came back, so here it is. 1 talent. Just returning what was given. And so now the big picture is that telling us something about how to account and also how to invest? You see, in the end, when everybody else was being applauded by the master, actually, the third one was reprimanded. Because what we show there, being asked questions like, you unfaithful servant. You could even have decided to just take it to the bank for it to earn some interest. I know that area is large because we have many talents that God has given to us, not only the money aspect of it. But in all, whether money or otherwise, then we should use these talents to grow and do God's work, by extension, even build our own selves. So I can as well say that it is meaningful to invest, because when you look at that situation, God is rewarding the person who has multiplied. In many ways, and therefore we need also to account for it. And investment is one way of doing that. When now I look at it literally, what you get, whether your salary or your business income, if you didn't invest, then what you have will be good for nothing, because we know that there is huge impact of inflation, and inflation erodes money very fast. We also know that there's huge impact in terms of compound interest factors on investments. For example, I wish we had a PowerPoint presentation here and then we put a chart that even as little as 2,000 shillings a month, if you save it over time continuously at high interest rates, let me assume a 10%, 2,000 Kenya shillings only, at 10% over maybe a 20-year period, we'll be talking about millions of shillings. Because inflation affects the value of assets, whatever assets or money, then investing is a cushion. It's a way that we also cushion what we have to make sure that there is a multiplicity, and therefore if 1 shilling could buy something 10 years ago, the equivalent of that today could be 1,000 shillings. And I can only actually maintain that value if I do some investment. Let me give a few examples. Again, my own examples, my own mistakes. There's a time when I was employed and, we were young and we thought things were okay. And so somebody approaches me that we should go and buy land at Kawasukari, costing only 7,000 shillings. And so indeed we went to Kawasukari. Those days, it was still a long drive all the way from Nairobi to Kawasukari. Today you might even reach there in 5 minutes and you have passed if you are driving. Those days with the rough roads, you could take even 2 hours. And so we go there. We came from university. We got jobs in some prime insurance companies, and we are saying, what is this? What the hell can you bring us into this bush? And so we ran away, we ran out of that, although we had the 7,000. You know, life is very interesting. Much later in life, I now saw the huge buildings in Kawasukari, and me and some friends, we wanted those buildings. So we went there to buy those plots at 500,000 Kenya shillings. Hello? I hope you have heard that, isn't it? So it was a mistake, a misjudgment. Just thinking that those days, if you are living near town here, you are okay. Ultimately, yes, we bought it at 500,000 each plot. Later on, I think some 5 years later, I sold it at 2 million because I needed money to do something. Hello? So you can see, maybe I tried to mend the mistake. The mistake I did earlier, I mended it at some point, and later on I sold and made my 2 millions, and I was in another project. That is a mistake, which was major. Another mistake I tell you is that one time we went to this place called Syokimau and Katani area, and we were a club of friends. And so we go there, and one of us took the wives. You know, they were living in Kiambu in a Sakati sort of housing, those houses where it is a Sakati and you have one toilet there and what have you, and that was appearing prestigious at that time. And so when we went to Katani and Syokimau, the wife becomes very hostile, that you cannot bring me into such a bush. And incidentally, we didn't get the opportunity to buy in Syokimau, but now the land sellers took us further into Katani. If you go to Katani today, you know, the man bought against the will of the wife. He bought the Katani plots against the will of the wife. Unfortunately, both of them are deceased. But today, if you go to Katani and you can see what is there, if you are selling those plots, you can easily get 5 million shillings, which can you do a big project even in the village. So those are some of the mistakes. So I'm talking about a plot we were buying at 80,000 Kenya shillings, and now can be 5 million, and that is really the essence of investing. So whether we are doing God's work or we are doing our own, we need to invest for tomorrow, because there will always be loss of value even if we kept Kenya shillings in the bank. But I wanted to say we start by honoring our obligations to God. Because when I look at me backwards, raised up from a family that didn't have anything, some of us went to school by God's grace. And I think God can pick anybody, anywhere, even in any family, and lift them up. And so we need, as Christians, I have seen there is some secret in people that serve God. So in all this, we don't lose in the long run if we serve our God. I'm not going to go into details of benevolent offerings, tithes and offerings and whatever, but that is what I mean. That let us honor God even now as we pursue our own self-development, because it will work for us. I can move out of that and just say that there are risks that we take when we want to invest. You know, I know that from Resper's, she has really, I feel like inviting her to my family so that she helps me address some of the things there. Because I now have seen the power that she has, and I see the challenges that I have. But sometimes we may not agree all the times, as long as also the end result is good. Because I recall when I was where I am living now, we were living somewhere in Eastlands, and of course we had paid a mortgage and finished, and we were very comfortable there. And at some point, my wife just started pushing me and saying, we have been here for too long, and she wanted us to move. And I was working, I was a manager with an insurance company, and so I thought that she had got some money. She looked like Nishonko, you know, in quotes, And so she pushes me from sleep, and we start looking for this home. And we looked for him. In my own conviction, this must also, she had some job, not high job, but at least some job. So I said, maybe she has got something. And you know, we went on like that, looked at many places. Eventually, when we settled on a house, thank God my employer had these mortgage loans for staff. And that is when I realized that I was on my own. When I'd committed now, I've even applied for a loan. Of course, now I realize that I was on my own. But she brought some money. Those days, buying a house for 4 million was not a joke. She brought some money, ultimately some 300,000. I appreciated that according to her income. But what I wanted to emphasize is that she pushed me into waking up. And eventually now I paid on that loan, and that is where we are living up to today. So I asked myself, suppose I was not woken up, I could have been still staying where I was. So we are not prescribing a formula. Sometimes husband and wife, one may be sharper than the other in terms of pushing and maybe thinking that we should take some risks. Sometimes I thought she went to some women caucus and they discussed their husbands. And so they decided to come and wake us from sleep. So whichever way, now I'm a proud owner of a home where I don't pay rent. There may be active investments as well as passive. For example, when we can decide to be farmers, be in the matatu business, even in business, we call those active, because unless you supervise, you are not going to go anywhere. And well, if I didn't have a lot of time, you can easily go into passive, where you buy a government bond or some shares. These days we have even unit trusts, and then we have other things like treasury bills and property. Even property is in that area, because you are now waiting for the value to rise and you are just getting your rental income. So somehow, when God has blessed us and account for Him, because we are Christians, we have to give our tithes and offerings. Of course, then we always pray to get that wisdom that Solomon looked for. Even investment, you have to look for that, able to now choose our investment wisely. I can assure you, like my co-presenter here said, me and my groups, we lost some 5 million in Kisumu. The challenge that even made our group to come to the end. We did everything. Let me just say here, we did search, we went and the green cards and everything, and we had a lawyer, and we paid some place in Yat up to the hill. When we had paid, the owners came, very highly connected, and sometimes you are not sure whether they are the real owners. But I think they seem to have a lot of influence. So we have even lost land in circumstances where everything is done, but there may have been a cartel that colluded to ensure that we didn't get it. So up today, it's a sad situation. But I still agree that we need to do a lot of due diligence. Maybe when we examine it, there is 1 or 2 areas we didn't check properly as a group. For us to be able to invest, we need to manage our incomes, or what I can say inflows, all inflows. You can have a variety of incomes, just like you also manage your outflows. Incomes may be those salary, the business income, all those other things. Outflows may be the rents, medical bills, and many other things. So in the interest of time, I'm just highlighting that we are not going to invest if we don't manage our outflows, even as we also look at and constantly review our inflows or our incomes. Along the way, even small timers can invest. Sometimes when we talk about investment, the big question is it for the rich? You know, is it the people who have millions of money? If I'm just a beginner, can I really invest? The answer is the investment people will say the younger you are, the better. And most of the times when you are young, you don't have much money. That is why we would have projected a 2,000 consistent saving every month can actually accumulate to very high amounts of money. Had I bought maybe 2 pieces or 3 pieces at Kawasukari, I would be earning about 8 million by the time now I sold the one I bought at 500,000, isn't it? So sometimes there are judgments that we make. It's a matter of risk. Sometimes you need somebody with the courage. Sometimes you may not even tell your spouse. Sometimes I've known. So I try to put everything on the table, but I also get a lot of doubting Thomases. So sometimes, oh no, you know, if we have this money, what if we don't, we did A, B, C, D. So there are many things that happen along the way. So you might find that at some point, I, as a man, I may decide to take a direction, but I will be open and transparent. I'm not saying that I take a direction, go and buy a plot, and have another somebody there that is not declared, because I'm married to one wife, and I know at the end of the day, when I'm promoted to glory, they are the people that will inherit. You know, like Abraham was talking about his situation, his situation and Sarah, and God gave them Isaac. So I realized this matter of inheritance is not a recent phenomenon. It started a long time. I better just realize that these are my people, irrespective of the circumstances. What I'm doing, yes, eventually they will take ownership. But in the meantime, I've made some decisions that appear to be not consultative, but ultimately, when now it is in place, I see people like it. See, I told you my wife pushed me to buy a house, isn't it? So sometimes I may also see her dragging her feet, and I have moved on, and I will say, my dear, you know we are doing this one. So I still think that the communication needs to be improved. But sometimes in decision making, sometimes we consult, but also take some risk, because we may not be both of us risk takers. Let me also say that in these matters called investments, we can start it along the way at any income. Just make sure that you review your debts and remove the things you can do away with. My co-presenters have talked about it. Sometimes I want to chase this because I've seen a brother driving a big car, the most recent car. So I got somebody who is a manager, but he prefers to pay rent in Buruburu because he may believe he is imagining that he will buy some property in Karen. And that is not coming soon. You imagine that your status you should be talking about Karen. So you are waiting to get money enough to reach there. But somebody takes in the Buruburu, and imagine this person is paying rent at Buruburu for now, almost 100,000 Kenya shillings. Me, I think the people who pay rent for 100,000 should be seriously thinking about buying their own houses or building their own houses. So, but when we are with our friends, when we discuss, sometimes we create an image in our minds, and so you keep on waiting. The other person that followed the Buruburu, maybe South Sea, eventually finds themselves in Karen very easily. Because there is the value of appreciation of land and even appreciation of a building. So at some point you can sell this one, which you thought was not a very good place for you. You just find that you now have some 5 million usually as a deposit to go to the next level. So when you have any opportunity, don't wait. Buy what you can buy after you have done due diligence and so on and so forth. Maybe I can also say that sometimes in investment, we will identify the risks. When I retired, I got a villager who was very close to me. And they normally know when people have retired. And I had never done procurement and supplies. You know, supplies is in town, isn't it? And the man comes and presents like, if we spend some 500,000 here, we will make 1.5 million. And who can refuse that? If you are now being approached by your real friend, even a villager. And I can tell you, I thought, yeah, I never tried supplies. I was an insurance and finance person. I would have continued with what I know better. And so it makes me into agreeing to spend some 300,000. I can tell you, I have never seen a return until today. Later, he was coming now to give me another proposal for 1 million. Oh, this one now. If we spend some 700, now we will get 1.7. Then God is the one who helped me. I think that prayer is good. Something told me, but where is the benefit of this 300 that we spent? And there was always a friend of him that they were partnering with. They always come. Kumbe, when they come, they have schemed what they will tell me. God saved me. Because now I decided that I want to start see the return on what I've already done. Now, when I started pressurizing, that is when I discovered that the LPOs were fake, the supplier or even the goods were never supplied. But there was a delivery invoice which is stamped. So there are many people also out here that will mess you up. So when you are investing, again, due diligence. Again, I have learned to do what I know, even if I get little money. I don't want big money. Sometimes you might think that you're going to make big money very quickly, and you might end up being the one losing your own, especially when you are a retiree like us. Although I'm a retiree who is a business person, so I'm still strong. So those are some of the things that we need to check. We have already seen that if you do not want troubles a lot, you can buy bonds. Those are passive. Be careful about shares because their values can go down. But if you want to balance your portfolio, you want to diversify, you can spread your asset base, property, shares, treasury bills, all those things, unit trusts, and many other things, and you are okay. But in all those, we must still also look at what we can call the active ones. Be a little farmer, even if you are a professional. I have some farm in the village where I put some fruits. It's a fruit farm. And these days I hear people say that, oh, somebody can come from Nairobi to do this, and we are here. When the mangoes are ready, Even the hungry people can cross through the fence, and sometimes I say they cannot finish it. So, we also need to diversify and balance, because you can't just be in specific area. You try to spread. So when I am in the village, when the mangoes are ready, I always just ferry them here. And the family, they don't spend money eating the mangoes. They just get mangoes and even other fruits. So we must also look at this other way of active involvement in some ways, though we have a lot of challenge there because supervision is a big problem. When you put a relative, you are likely to fail. So you need some helper which is coming from Kakamega there, if your village is in Beta in Rusenga, and so on and so forth. So I want just to stop there and say that it is an opportunity for us to know that a ceiling without multiplying is not good enough. But in all these things, we need to plan, we need to look at our commitments. I saw somebody that had a big problem with the credit card. Credit card was almost splitting the family. You know, the return, the charges on credit cards are very high. It makes you not even pay your tithes and offerings. But now it is beyond that. Now it is splitting the family. Because when credit card has reached 300,000, it's like a loan, and the interest rate is almost 30%. So the husband is in a dilemma. And now he doesn't have a job. And he believes that he should actually use credit card. So the credit card is almost full at the brim. 300,000 all the time. You can imagine 30% on that, what it is. And so, tension is in the house. Sometimes let us pray we manage our monies in a way that we avoid the things we can call bad debts. Remove them. Get them out. You don't need a credit card to be prestigious. Actually, I'm better off if I want to put fuel, put it with the money I have. If I don't have fuel, I go into the Easy Coach and go to Mbeta. I pay only 2,000 going there. If I have fuel, I will pay. But if I say I'm going, I use credit card, and it will take me 6 months to retire, that is like going into a cocoon that even when I come to church, I will be one of these people that have excuses of not even supporting God's work. So discipline is important, even in investment. I want to stop there. We must identify the risk. We try to manage the risks. Sometimes, of course, risk-taking is also good. You might take risk and you find that you're on the other way. So take calculated risks and try to diversify your assets in a way that even if you lose out in some areas, maybe you can still be able to stand up. And I'm not talking about somebody who gets a big money at some point and becomes a wealthy person. I'm just talking an average person that you can maintain some discipline, you can actually do something, you can change your life, because there is something called the time value of money. A shilling today is better than a shilling tomorrow. May I stop there so that maybe I take it back? And I'm sure that it is not an area you don't have ideas. You have many ideas. Thank you very much.
Elder, just to pick you up, when one of the audience members knew you were coming, they are a retired person, and they asked me to ask you this specific question. What about those who are retired? Can they be assured of financial security and comfort?
Okay. For the people who have retired, assurance of financial security is not a matter of just what you do in retirement. It has been a journey. So that's why I said there is pre-retirement preparations. There is what you do. Some people have pensions. They can say, I have a pension. But even pension can be eroded by inflation. You might get a pension of 50,000. After some 5 years, if you are still alive, the impact of inflation is high. So we always say that it is actually a combination of everything you do, excluding even what goes into the pension. So it means that when I'm still active, I must be able, if my pension I'm contributing, say 15%, and I pay taxes and my tithes, say the balance of 50% that remains, what do I do with it? You know, there's no point. We have to be realistic, because some people want to have good life. They do not want to save. And yes, they can even say, I've educated my children. There's a contentious discussion that even when you have educated your children, try to plan for yourself. There's a time you can remain with your spouse, though you have educated your children. So I have this neighbor who has diabetes and high blood pressure and what have you, and it's always better saying, you know, they have not sent money for my medication, whatever it is, because this world, the children also face a world where they meet a lot of challenges. They may not send to us money as we thought. In any case, I am a victim, because when my mother was alive and she was in the village, no pension, the amount I would sacrifice to help was making sense to her, but I didn't think it was much. You know, she thanks me, my child, thank you, thank you, thank you, you're always caring. But me, when I knew how much I was earning and how much I would give it to her, and I knew very well that I was guilty. And so our children will only support us a bit. Make sure as you work, even as you educate your children, please, there is one secret, let us tell you, that plan for yourself, you and your spouse at some point, that they might marry a wife, like Reza was saying, somebody likes going out all the time, eating out, and probably, of course, your son also loves that one, or it may be the reverse, that the man now is that type. And so, financial security in retirement is a combination of all that you did before retirement. But anyway, if you are in retirement, you can still plan. You can still plan. People think that when you are retired, you can't invest, you can't do anything. Me, I tell you, you can still save, because you may still have some surplus net after your expenses. Maybe you are not paying school fees directly. Although some of us have also inherited our grandchildren, we pay for them. If that is in your home, just accept it. Because sometimes you have a son there or a daughter that needs help. So you might still find that you are still paying. But we want to assume that your expenses have gone down, and even in retirement, you can still look at if you have a surplus after your expenses, and you have to manage them. One thing now I have discovered is that I am more organized in retirement than when I was employed. Because when I was employed, my pay slip was secret. Some people will tell us if they know it is high salary, you know, they might blame you a lot. So sometimes we left it in the office. But in the process, I never wrote down what I wanted. Out here, the auditors, like my elder here, Mitoko, they audit my businesses. So I've learned that there's something called expense. There is all these business associated costs. And when there's a profit, that is the only thing I can say is my money. And now I've learned that we have a business account where I'm a signatory. My wife is a signatory. Everything is open. But in those days, I used to keep my account for myself. But I was lucky that my wife was not that type. I know a family is struggling where we can say that, yes, your salary is ours, but mine, don't ask too much about mine. And these are people, there are two people that are very senior. One is even a banker. Another one is also very well employed. And you see, 10 years later, they are still paying rent, and I'm asking them why. And when I look at the whole situation, is that each person wants to go there their way. We have some of these friends that we have, even in the offices, they go with you away, and there is no lack of focus. You might think that they are happy when you have tribulations in your family. So people that are blessed, and they are not able to say, let us have a direction where we are going and a focus. That is disaster in retirement, because retirement is coming. Every year, you are moving closer to retirement. And even when we take loans, you have to repay them earlier so that when you are in retirement, you are not paying loans. You reduce loans. So I want to say it is possible to retire. It is possible to do something gainful in retirement. Sometimes you might even feel you are more happier and comfortable in retirement, and therefore the story continues. I know somebody in retirement who just did a very successful project somewhere near where we are, because the counties are now towns. You can see somebody investing in retirement, and you just wonder, because people really will tell you, now don't try new things, don't put your money in property. You know yourselves, you know your cash flow. After you have paid taxes, you have paid those, give Caesar what is Caesar's, you have given to God what is God's. I can tell you, you can invest in retirement. Get more comfortable. And when you are such a person, you are actually drawing the children nearer to you. Hello? They get more closer to, because they know that you can even support them in retirement. Have something to bring them closer, isn't it? Yes. Thank you.
I just want to thank our online audience, specifically Caleb Victor, who has joined us all the way from Migori. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, there's a number of questions before I come to the floor, and I'm pretty sure a number of you might have some questions. There's a question coming in. Whoever would like to respond to this as we come to the tail end of this. After the question, then I will allow you, all of you, to give your closing remarks in 2 minutes each. The question here is the wife also required to contribute to monthly financial bills and savings? Or is it the man as provider to take care of all expenses? I don't know who'd like to take that one up. Or should I ask the lady? Okay, please, Sister Resper. Is the wife also required to contribute to monthly financial bills and savings? Or is it the man as provider to take care of all expenses?
Good question. Am I on? It's a good question, and I think I touched bits of it when I was discussing. I think you have to look at each family's context. When you say, is the wife supposed to contribute, is she working? Or is she doing something gainful for the family? And it brings me back to the issue I talked about, your goals. If your goal is to own a house, you have to sit down as a family and decide, what do we need to be putting aside to afford this house? If in the process, for you to achieve this goal and remember your goals are short-term or long-term. So if you want to achieve something in 3 years or 5 years, then it means you have to sit down and say, for us to achieve this thing in 3 years, this is what the man can put on the table. This is what the wife can support. And sometimes it may not even be money. If this wife is a farmer, she's making sure food is on the table. So really, each family has to evaluate what is the income of the husband, what is the income of the wife, what is the goal they want to achieve, and how can they financially achieve this goal within the framework of time they have set aside. And of course, this goal is in the context of other things. There's school fees, there's rent, there's everything else. When we put these things in a basket, what is the role of each spouse so that we achieve that goal we have set off to achieve?
Thank you. Well said. Kennedy Ariembi joining us from Seme Kombewa. Thank you very much for joining us. one of the audience has also asked me to request any of the panelists if they can at least talk about medical cover for golden agers. I think this is in relation to health expenses post-retirement.
Okay, so maybe I can pick that one. Medical cover for golden agers. It is possible, yes. There are products in the market. Somehow, the premiums, the older you are, the higher the premiums. Because you know, youthful people are still very strong, their bodies are resistant. They may not be able to be affected by many, many challenges, but we all know their old age conditions, whether we are men or ladies. Therefore, there are products in the market. And I know, for example, that there are quite a number of people that have retired that have bought medical insurance. And as I said, my experience in insurance broking and with those years, I've helped a lot of families buy medical insurance, because when the employer's medical stops, I can tell you we get very exposed. When I was employed, I could sleep anywhere, even in Nairobi Hospital, very easily, and walk out without a bill. But today, yes, we see that the costs are high. It is important to have some insurance, either as a family or even individually, if you can. It will be subject to insurance underwriting. The underwriting is assessment of the applicant, what they have disclosed. They give you a form. They tell you to disclose freely your medical conditions. And it is not good to hide, because if you hide, you might buy the cover and then you start getting sick and they can get a trail. So most people are encouraged to use a principle of utmost good faith, declare the condition, they charge you correct premium, they may then cover you. Sometimes your cover may be deferred for 1 year for that particular condition. Yes, it is actually something that is available. There are many insurance companies. If you are not in a group, because it is also possible for a group to come together and buy medical insurance. If there is, maybe there's some society or there's some group of friends, but what I see, people out of employment, they tend to get it on their own. Please do not expose yourself too much by not having, because at some point, even if the bill is high, the insurance will be the first point of settlement. And if we do other support, like family support, Arambes, and what have you, so those will find that you are already having something. So that when you are going to be admitted, you don't say that, let me bring cash. With some cover, you'll be admitted, the rest can follow. Thank you very much.
Now, I'll go to the audience on the floor in charge. Maybe do we have any questions or points that somebody would like to share? Yes, I can see Professor Muma at the back. Anybody else? I can see also Henry and Mrs. Yukabet. Okay. Prof, by all means.
Thank you very much, the panelists, for this sharing. We appreciate. Two, I don't know how to call them questions or points to raise. Number one, on the issue of investments. I agree with all your sentiments on investment, but you'll agree with me that it is on this that a lot of prime tears have been shed, including the experiences that you have shared with us, the Kisumu and etc. A few years ago in this country, I don't know whether it was collusion of sorts, but the share thing was portrayed as the in-thing investment. And we had a Safaricom, IPO, Kengen, IPO, Mumias, IPO, and it was portrayed in the media and everywhere like this was the in thing in terms of investment. And people bought shares, seriously. Today, as we talk, 2 weeks ago, I went to check out on my Mumias, and I was told that one died. That one just died, just forget about it. And I think Kenya is a very dangerous country. Now I'm trying to look backwards, and I think just some people decided to coalesce, and make a theory to make people believe so that they could get their cash. Because this one money that goes, you cannot track it anywhere. They tell you Mumias is dead. So it's dead with your money, it's dead. So I don't know. In fact, I was listening very carefully, but from the things that have come on the floor, there seems to be no fast and rules that when it comes to investment, do A, B, C, D. It seems to be the old theory of try with due diligence and see where it gets you. That's what has come on the floor. But I leave it at that. But number two, to Madam Resper, you've talked very candidly on the issue of family finance. Now, currently, there is a lot of discussion on the virtual space on the fate of men in their old age. And I don't know which WhatsApp groups you belong to, but whichever ones we belong to, there's a lot of discussion on this. And there are cases being presented of men being very miserable in their old age, especially after doing the best that they could do, of course, to educate their children, to support their families and get somewhere. And the same story goes, they are in their retirement, their wife has joined the children in Australia or US or wherever, and the old man finds himself alone, starting like a bachelor at the age of 80. And so there's a lot of misery. May I also say, because I'm sure some of you have seen this, that even what happened last week on Friday is all over on the virtual space. People are saying, okay, that is the father of the general. See, nobody even mentions his name. And so many a man are getting to a level where we are starting to think, really, do we need to rethink how we support our families, or where is the way to go? They talk about Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a world-renowned scholar, divorced at 84, and they tell you pictures of his life, very miserable. And then you say, really? And of course, these are husbands of one wife. I don't know. I don't know. But this one is something that I think we are at a level where we must be able to really come out and say which is the way to go. Because otherwise, people will do mistakes. One of the common mistakes, like a friend of mine in another forum says, me and now I'll just pay the fees, investments I put for my own. When they desert me at 80, I can survive. What is your take? Thank you.
Okay, so two questions have been posed there. Number one, how do we select investments? I hear Prof got his fingers burnt buying an asset that had poor fundamentals. And then number two, the question of the 80-year-old bachelor. When children and the wife leave the man after he has struggled so hard to educate them and be with them. I think I hear what is the cause of that and how do we mitigate that as a society. Maybe let's take a second one so that then we can have the answers in chunks. I can see, yes, the young brother, please.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much for the golden nuggets we are getting. We really appreciate it. We're also getting the aspect of retirement. So I think we are learning from that. We had a question to Elder Benson Ateng on the issue of government bonds, or rather the treasury bonds. What are the misconceptions that we, it is, or rather from where we sit, it is a very lucrative, or rather thing to do, to invest in these bonds. So what are those misconceptions which are there, and how can you use the best way to invest in these bonds? Yeah.
Okay, so that's directed to Elder Ateng. He's asking about government bonds. What are the misconceptions? First, are they beneficial?
Yes.
And secondly, what are the misconceptions?
And how you can invest in them.
Yeah. Just to make Elder Ateng's life easier, do you have a CDSC account? I'm working on that, but okay. My friend here has one. So, yes, we are working on that, yeah. Okay, so maybe I can see Elder Ongeri wanted to say something. Maybe let's pick it as the last one for this session. Elder,
Mine is in the form of a comment.
Yes.
Maybe give you my own experience, one or two. I think retirement, post-retirement, is a very challenging moment, for sure. And I think this debate has come at a very right time. When you are in employment, you hardly think that post-retirement you will have problems. That's when problems come up in drones. You have educated your children, you have your grandchildren who are also being educated through your support when you are in employment, and suddenly you have no job. And your pension is based on the old calculations, and it's not enough to even take you a week. So the question that arises, and I think you touched on it, what do you do post-retirement age? One of the things that is critical, particularly the young people who are in employment, the thing that you must do, invest in small things that don't matter. And the safest I can remember, today now when I reflect back, I invested in small little things called land. Of course, prudently. Today, it's the anchor of my life. Why do I say so? Because you can sell a little bit and be able to live your life. The only challenge in that one is that it's very difficult to turn it into cash immediately, because looking for buyers takes time. So I'll advise this way. When you have extra cash, you need that extra cash in the bank somewhere, invested in a circle that is viable, that you can call upon within 24 hours and get it, because the most immediate emergency all the time is medical bills. That one I can tell you, even your children will run away from you when the bill is very high. So you need some extra cash somewhere to buffer you when that need arises. So if you have not started saving, start saving now, not for anything else, but for your future medical bills. Because they are the ones that are going to be very challenging. And you have worked in the insurance. You know when you turn 70, they turn you off. They say you are high risk, so they will not insure you. So that's where you suffer double tragedy. And the banks, the other day, when I wanted some little help from one of the banks for an urgent matter, they told me, Professor, you're above 80. Unless you are in a company where we'll use it to borrow the money. So if you're above 70, try and look for a company to join, because the banks will not give you the loan that you want for self-improvement. It can be a bank with your children, with somebody else, a company. That's another problem that we see today. But one of the things I've enjoyed most, the little investment I made in the land at home. When we go there with my wife, I'm afraid she's not here, I wish she could listen to this, our expenses are zero. So everything is from the farm, all the vegetables, all the things that we get from there. And then at the end, we have a little cash coming from dairy products and the little tea and the bananas we plant, and we are very comfortable. But come to Nairobi, then you have a problem. So what am I saying? Can you try and invest in whatever little land you have for your retirement? Because when you get old, you can retire back to that land, do something positive about it. It will at least feed you. You may not be able to take care of your medical expenses, but it will feed you. And one hazard, which I suffer most, having been a politician. One of the things that people think that politicians have got money working on them or grafted on them. So even when you retire, even as I'm seated here, I'm inundated by one request after the other. My child is sick. I know you can help me. I have no school fees now as the school fees start. And somehow you are close relatives, close friends, you don't know what to do. When you try to spread out the risks, send them 2,000, 3,000, according to the need, 5,000, they still are not satisfied. They think that you are denying them. I'm not asking you to be selfish, but a time comes in the old age that you mind about your wife and yourself first before you mind others. I'm not being selfish. Because these children, they will tell you, you have lived your life, so let us live also our life. So I'm warning the parents who are approaching our age, me and Mama, that one of the things you can do, keep a safeguard somewhere that can draw upon in form of cash. And when we were having a chat with one of our children, he told us, you know, you must have some cash somewhere that you can draw on. I thought that was a very sound advice, and I found it very useful. I did not come to lecture, but give you what I am going through with my wife. She's here, she can bear witness. But you can still live a comfortable life if you take care of what you did. The question of shares, I'm sorry, young man, you talked about shares. Well, we suffer the same fate. It's only a day before yesterday again, on Friday or Saturday, it was that Saturday, Friday, we were asking the value of our shares, me and my wife. So we rang somebody who normally deals with the shares. And she told us, sorry, you know that shares that you used to sell at 100 shillings a share, the other one was about 250 shillings a share. Today they are worth 2 shillings. So that's the predicament of making a choice on what to invest on. Probably the most ready investment is treasury bills. But you are tied in to a period. Unless you use some other instruments to access that easy and ready cash. But other things on shares and what have you, they are very volatile, depending upon the economic cycle in which you are. Right now in Kenya, we're in a very bad economic cycle. And therefore, they cannot give you ready cash that you need for anything urgent that you want to dispose of or deal with that requires hard cash. So you must diversify your options, and I completely agree with somebody who, I don't know who said it, put something little here, spread your risks. One will always be handy to help you when you are in need. Where we stay now, we bought that land in 1970s for 5,000 shillings. in Kileleshwa. We bought it for 5,000. And I went to the bank to borrow the money to start building. And they told me, you need 140,000. I didn't have the money. I asked somebody to guarantee me. That person happened to have been able to guarantee us. So we bought and built that house 140. When we casually asked what that is worth, what is it's worth, we find it's slightly over maybe 200 million. Now, that's how much between 1970 and today. If you tell us to move from that house, we'll say when we are gone, when we are not there, then that's the only time you can move us from that house. But you can see the level of appreciation, very high. And land always appreciates. There may be a glut, but a time comes when it will appreciate. And we have seen whatever we've held here and there, it appreciates to a very high level. So invest on something that has an appreciation even to the future, even when things are very tough. As you do so, keep something in cash somewhere for the rainy day. Thank you.
I'll let Sister Resper respond to the question that was raised about the 80-year-old bachelors. I think Elder has dealt quite conclusively with selection of investments, and I think it was also about spreading your risk. But I know, Elder, you wanted to just make a mention of something additional?
Well, it's just confirming what you have said.
By all means, go ahead, just confirm.
Can you? I agree with what Professor has said. It is indeed necessary at certain level to have ready cash. But I will tell you that ready cash has only a cost. It does not earn income. And therefore, try to find, there are these days even a daily, investment. There are cash in the market. They lend it overnight and so forth, and they can give it to you very quickly, anytime. The current account will only charge you interest and ledger fees and so forth. It is good, yes, to have a variety. You talked about shares. Some of us wanted to be good citizens and invested in Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways shares, I don't know whether they are dealing now, but you have lost everything. But I know that people who bought shares in, say, the Nation, I bought some shares of Nation at 11 shillings. I sold them at a price of 230, something like that, per share. That is a gain. But we are talking about investment in different areas. So don't put your cash in everything. Keep as little cash as you can on the current account because it only charges you. You have the money market where you can put it and it will give you something in return. So it is good. Again, somebody who was retired like you, like us, will be spending a lot of money on medical expenses. That is the heaviest expenses that we now go. But you can have certain insurance. I was in the local one and I found it I was being told we can't cover this because it is continuing. It was a prior year or something. You had that case before. and you have problems. But now they are improving to certain policies which will cover you very well. So be looking at what is available in the market. Don't always continue with the old ones, because the old ones have learned how to avoid meeting your expenses.
To Sister Resper to just respond on the question of the 80-year-old bachelor, and then thereafter I will let Elder Ateng respond to the bonds.
Thank you. As I do so, I just want to quickly point out a few things on shares. Kenya is a very small market in terms of shares, and the few rich people in Kenya can easily manipulate the prices. That's my one observation. So due diligence is necessary. Number two caution that I share with many people is avoid, where you can, government organizations that are trading in the stock market. They are politically used, and therefore, depending on the whims of who is heading that institution, they can go either way. So if you are really going into the stock market for making money, avoid those government-run institutions because they will be manipulated by politicians. My second question on the 80-year-old bachelor, and it's an interesting one because I even saw an online TikTok where the men are now cooking ugali for themselves because the wife has gone to visit the children, the grandchildren. Two things. In one case, there is the extreme case where the man was not a provider, and I'm being real here, where the man was not a provider. And for some reason, this lady has struggled through life, and her children are doing well. And chances are, the lady, and unfortunately many of our ladies, Christian as they are, this is her harvest time, a payback period for what she has gone through life, okay? So that's a reality. You need a spirit of forgiveness to let this man in your life. That is scenario number one. Scenario number two is whereby you have provided. You have provided school fees and everything. But I think what most of our men miss is the emotional provision. Unfortunately for the men, the women, through their relationship, their biological relationship with the children, there is an emotional relationship from birth. And therefore, these children tend to be close to the mothers. Now, because the men are busy out there providing and having very little time for the children, when these children become adults, unless you have a wise wife who tries to create a balance in old age, chances are these children do not know the father other than he was a provider. And therefore, they don't seem to see the loneliness this father is experiencing. So for the young couples, I think one thing I'm saying that it's not just financial provision for your children. You need to spend time so that you create an emotional bond between you and your children. And where that emotional bond is strong, even when mommy comes and says, I'm here, you know the children will be saying, but mom, where have you left? Who is taking care of dad? Or can you come with dad? So it is very, very important that you create a warm emotional relationship with your children. Woe unto you if you are an absent father and you are not a provider. You will be a very senior bachelor in your 80s. Thank you.
Let me ask Elder Ateng. I also saw some questions at the mid. We are coming to them. Let just Elder Ateng respond to the question on the bonds. Audience, I kindly request if you can just indulge us for another 15 minutes so that we can get the questions and responses from the floor, and thereafter we can move towards closure. Is that okay? Is that, do I have your license to do that? Okay, thank you. Elder Ateng?
Thank you very much. And young man, thank you for the question, a very relevant question. Okay. The question was about government bonds. Professor Ngeri touched on that a little bit. Now, in investment, people look at the risks that are involved, uncertainties that are involved in investing in anything. There are some investors that are risk averse, and there are some other investors that are ready to take risks. There are some projects that are very risky, but are with very high returns. If you are lucky, you go for such investments and things don't go wrong, you benefit a lot. But if you are unlucky, the loss can be tremendous. With the government bonds, they are fairly safe. The returns may not be that high, but you know that you will get something in the end. Now, my question is to you, you invest in those government bonds, you get the returns. What do you do with the returns? Do you go back and buy more government bonds forever? No. Diversify so that when things go wrong, not all your investments will go to the drains. Go for those government bonds, get your money back, and look for something else where you can also put your money and get even more. And even the ones that are very high returns, please don't just invest in those. You should also invest in those that give you moderate returns, that may give you low returns, but are almost sure. So diversification is important. Before I end, let me just speak on what Professor Muma mentioned about old age. I'm picking on it because when I look at the audience, most of you are what I would call young adults. Most of you, your parents are still alive. And some of you take some of the scriptures in the Bible out of context. For example, in Genesis it says, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. Does that say that you will not take care of your parents? No. What does Timothy say? 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8 says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel. An infidel is an unbeliever. We have the moral obligation to take care of our parents. There are some parents that are able to take care of themselves. That is fine. But if you have parents that are not able to take care of themselves and you are in a position to help, why not? Let me give you an example that I've witnessed in this church and that I really admire. I hope they don't mind if they are not here, but I hope they don't mind if I mention their names. I've seen Elder Opio, the one who plays the piano here, the way she took care of the mother-in-law, and the way they are now taking care of a sister-in-law. That is admirable, and that is how we should behave, young people. Let me tell you of my own situation. I really admire, my mother is now asleep, but I really admire how my wife took care of my mother. I would provide the money, yes, but she took care of everything. We are here in Nairobi, started from when we were in the US. She made sure that there were people taking care of her. She would call from time to time to find out if they were there. When we came back to Nairobi, she kept on taking care of my mother, even in long distance. And even the day that my mother died, we were at home attending a camp meeting, our local camp meeting. In the morning, my brothers and I had gone to the campsite. She came after us, but before coming, she went to check how my mom was. She realized that she was not in a good condition. Even without calling us, she called for a medic, asked the medic to come with an ambulance. And then she called us saying, Mom is not in a good condition, but I've called and a medic is coming with an ambulance. By the time we arrived home, the ambulance was already there. And that evening, my mother fell asleep. Now, her mom is still alive. Given how she took care of my mother, what would stop me from taking care of her mother? Young people, I know we are not your obligation, but if I'm your father, I'm your mother, morally, if you are able, you see, taking care of your parents is not just money. They need somebody to talk to. If your parents are still alive, when you take time off here sometimes and go and just talk to them, even if they don't need your money, give them a call. That is an obligation. Let me end it there.
With that, when you think about bonds, there are also issues of unit trust. I know you wanted to say something about that. Yeah.
There is a new product in the market for those who want to invest, unit trusts. There are now a number of fund managers that are licensed under the Capital Markets Authority, and they do pooling of funds. So there can be a bond fund where you buy bond, you participate in a bond, as we have been told here. There can be money market fund, more or less like treasury bill, but the returns are almost 10 plus. If you look at even the daily newspapers, somewhere where we see stock exchange on that page, you will also see a number of unit trust funds, companies that manage those funds. And they accumulate contributions from all over. I can just be an individual buying a unit, but those large funds are then invested, some in bonds and other asset classes, and the returns they give back to contributors are actually quite impressive. The risks are minimal because you can choose a fund. If you don't want an equity fund, you don't have to put your money there. They pay very quickly. By just 3 working days notice, you have your money in the bank. And I know that many people are putting money even when they want to plan for projects. They can, you put money, recall in part, and it continues. So it is a very popular investment area. Get to know more about it and put your funds there. Even retirees can actually put money there, because if I need money for medical and I had, say, some 3 million in unit trust, maybe a money market fund, it will be given to me like within 3 working days, either in part as I have sent a written request. So that is what I wanted to add. I know that treasury bill has been the traditional one that is known to many people. Of course, it is government related, and maybe sometimes you have to wait for 90 days for it to mature unless, again, you sell it in the secondary market. But the unit trust rates tend to be higher than even what you get in treasury bills. Thank you.
So 3 questions on the mid-row. I can see Henry. I also saw Madam Yukabet. Maybe we can begin with Henry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, let me add my voice to thank the Golden Age Ministry for these nuggets of wisdom. The question that I have is a little related to what Professor Muma asked, his first question. In our country, we seem to, be run by some sort of cartels. Recently, we got certain scares, that because of the prevailing economic situation in the country, if the country cannot meet its obligations to the loans that they have taken, we have been threatened that your money that you have worked so hard to earn can receive a haircut. from the government without your authority. And here we are talking about, diversifying your investments. And part of it, I believe, is what Professor Ongeri talked about. You may maintain a little bit of cash. You may have the money market funds. You may have all these different classes of investments. What is your take in a situation like that? Because those kind of statements sometimes are making people feel we need to go the old way, have my money under my mattress, because that way the government cannot reach it. Thank you.
Next question. We can take them in a chunk. Ma'am?
I think what I wanted to say, the professor they have said it, so I don't want to repeat the thing because of the time. I thank Gold Lady for this program, and what I wanted to add is old age like me. We have grandchildren and we have children that we look. When you have your husband, that's your husband. So even if we have our grandchildren, sometimes we forget about our husband. Make sure you take care of your husband. That's very important. When I was in US, I was the leader of women, and we discussed this, and most of the men came and complained for me that when they have grandchildren, sometimes the wife forget about them. And we had that program, was very successful, and men were so grateful. They thanked me for that. So in Africa, we tend to forget about our husband when we reach it. Like mine, I've been married for 54 years, I tell you. And I just want to tell you what he was talking about. He's a nightmare, and like me now when I live with him, about economies. He's an economist. When we were in US, our son was working. By that time, he had no social security because he was still young. The guy kept giving the father the money to keep it. Yeah? You have been keeping, you never use it for a year. And you are asking your father, hey, can I get even 5? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your money? So what he said, he really practiced that. But he saved, later on he bought a house in America. So what he's saying is true, to be economist, but also don't forget you have a life. Yeah? I agree what he's saying, but sometimes I disagree with him because it's very strict, but it makes sense. But imagine you have worked for a year and you want to use your money and your father is saying, what are you going to do with it? Yeah? But later on, it was worth it. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. I think then any of us can respond to Deacon Henry's question. The question was about, the cyclical nature of life, the threat.
Okay, so maybe I can say this. In Kenya, sometimes there is too much politicking and noise and many things. So I've also realized that we must reach where we separate noise from real investment issues. Because with investment issues, you can even find more information, go to a stockbroker to give you more information, go to some investment expert to give you some information. Because I also believe that somehow you'll have to take the risk. Because keeping money in a pillow is no return, which means you are just devaluing it. It's even worse. So we take calculated risks. We look at your risk profile, risk tolerance, risk appetite. There are some decisions you will make as a person. But one thing also about Kenya is that we have gone through turbulence, but I've seen governments and succeeding governments, and our economy is resilient. So let us not fear. The fear of, a politician just opened their mouth and they said something that when you look at it, you even think like the country is burning. Because when I saw government was under pressure and they wanted to repay the Eurobond, for example, it was both a problem and an opportunity. because they started issuing bonds at a very high rate, almost 17%. To me, if I had money, that would be the time I will run to buy those bonds and earn my 17%. And I know to the tax people, they are taxing us so that they pay the Eurobond. So there's a lot of noise. But even in the midst of that, there is still an opportunity. So the investment mind evaluates the opportunities and take advantage. Some are strategic, long-term, but some are tactical. Like the recent bond yields, where if anybody had money, they could buy it. And I know that our government or our nation or our country has a resilience that I don't want to think for the worst. We have overcome difficult times, so as an investor, balance your portfolio, balance. Even shares, as somebody said, it should be based on fundamentals, selection based on fundamentals, which means that financially, you analyze the books, you see the share capital, you see the profitability, you see the consistency. There is one share even in government, if I don't market for them, I've enjoyed some dividends from Cooperative Bank. It is government. But somehow, sometimes I just see a check of 20,000. I know what I invested those days was very little. Actually, it was maybe just about some 15,000 those days. Once in a year, when they declare, I receive that and I feel good. So not every government-related is bad, but there are also certain sectors, like this sector of the airline. It is turbulent worldwide, so no wonder KQ is struggling all the time. I bought those shares as 130. I have never known what to do with them because now they could even be negative. So, but I'm not worried about that because I also balanced the share portfolio, but also spread into other areas like property. So somehow you may find that if a certain asset class is underperforming, you are still covered. Don't put all your eggs in one bucket. Let us not fear too much that even when you hear the politicians, you think that the country is burning. It's not a good projection, but there is still something good in the midst of that.
Okay, the last one, and then we can close. Thank you.
And also add on to what my brother has talked about, the balancing, but I'm also, there are products in the market, banks, for those who have money, so that if you have money, all in Kenya shillings, you can actually invest in other foreign currencies that are still strong, that their turbulence is not as high as our own. And therefore, you go to institutions, particularly banks and investment firms, and you can actually domicile some of that money you have in cash out. And actually now you are allowed to even invest outside the country, whereby even if your Kenya shillings goes through a haircut like they did in Ghana, your money is sitting offshore somewhere. When you will need it, it will come back maybe in some good money for you on top of that. But again, the other investment you can easily do, if you have money, there are some things like we have already mentioned here. There are certain assets, even when you go through a haircut, they may go down for a while, but they'll pick up. Like when we are talking property, you have money, if you buy a property for 20 million, the worst that can happen, it might go down to maybe 15 or 17 for several years, but at some point it will come back to 25, 26. You rather have that money in the house or in the property than have it in the bank, whereby when the haircut comes and you are told now your 100 shillings is worth 70 or 50, your product, probably your item in property, will not go down as fast, and it will at some point revive. So I think evaluate your product portfolio, where you want to put your money, where so that you minimize the risk of where your investments are. And at the end of the day, we live in a world of risk. You wake up one day and tomorrow things have changed. So every human being is subject to risk. It is just how you want to manage it in your portfolio of your life and your family. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think with that, I I was going to ask them to give one statement each, but I can see time is not in our favor. But I'll just simply recap. Elder began by saying plan, budget, execute, review. He also talked about remembering your first obligation, which is your tithe, your obligation to God, then your obligation to your parents, and then finally your obligation to yourself. Sister Resper talked about being open with your spouse in matters finance, being open in the family setup so that we reduce conflicts. Elder Benson also talked very wonderfully about exercising diligence when it comes to investments. I think the main point was research, research, research. And then finally, Elder Michael talked very well about investing, laying aside for the future. And it doesn't matter how much you're earning at this point in time. He said, time is your friend. The more time you have, the better. The earlier you begin, the better. Our audience online, mine is just to thank you so much. I just want to recognize Esther Mireku, who's watching us from Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. The Golden Age is supported by its head elder, and we also have our pastor here. Maybe mine was just to give, as we close, the head elder an opportunity to just say a vote of thanks for this, and then he will then invite our pastor to be able to close for us with a word of prayer. Once more, I just want to thank the panel who are seated here. As you can see, they might be golden agers, but they have a lot of stamina. You can see by their faces, they are not tired at all. So we really thank God for them. We bless them, and we bless the Lord for their service in this church. Over to you, Elder Charles.
Thank you so much, Brother Joseph Kongoro, and thank you, the panelists, for exposing to us how we can be prudent in our financial matters. God bless you, and richly bless also the members of the church who came. We really thank God for this wonderful opportunity, and I think we'll have to thank the department and tell them that we need many of such seminars so that members can actually benefit. We praise the Lord, and we hope that God giving us an opportunity and another time, there'll be another time to bring another session, which may not necessarily be on financial matters, but on another one. Otherwise, I want to thank the church for accepting that this seminar be held on a Sunday. It's rare to have it on Sundays. We normally have these seminars in the afternoon of Sabbaths, but the Lord made it possible, and may His name be praised. The communication team, we really want to thank you for taking out your time to come and ensure that the church benefits, and even the entire members who are watching from far, that they should also benefit from this. So without saying much, I want to call upon our pastor, who is also the pastor in charge of the Golden Age, that he may come and say a word, and then close the seminar with a word of prayer. God bless each one of you.
I'm so happy to be blessed by this team. Thank you, Elder, for coming from South Church. And Elder Mitoko, I've learned a lot. I can actually tell you, each of you, what I picked as a person. Not for the church, but just for me as a person. I won't forget, I'll be very careful not to buy lemons. And that touched me, you know. The lemons don't last for long. I think that was very profound. And of course, with the elder here, so much about investment. And what interested me is actually because we had many young people in the audience here. and that even 2,000, subject 10 to time can be something. Because at times when people hear about investment, they think of big money, and mom, the family issues, it came out very strongly. And I think that's why Elder was saying you can be a help. So we want to thank the Lord so much. Elder Mitoko gave a very good background on the entire context of what we're discussing today. He spoke like a deep theologian, how he connected the whole thing with the biblical concept. Thank you so much. And I want to appreciate the organizers, Mom, and your team. Thank you so much. By the way, Sister Maren is very handy in doing things, and very, very high level of consulting every step of the way, talking to me, Pastor, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing. And thank you so much, Mom, for your time. Thank you, Elder. I know you are here today because this is very close in your heart, as the elder in charge of this department. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I want to thank everyone who has come, and especially the Golden Agers, Prof and your wife. I know you didn't come to be told how to be prudent with finances, because you have been, you spent much of your finances handling them. But you just came so that when we see you, we know these things are important to us young people. So we want to appreciate so much for your coming. May the Lord bless you so much. I will invite you to stand. Elder, when we go back to South Church, our very warm thank you to your church, your pastor, Pastor Dan, who is my best man in my wedding. So we are very close. Just go and tell him we appreciate so much for releasing you to come. Thank you. Let's pray. Our gracious Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the privilege of this meeting. Indeed, this was very, very informative. I wish that the church was full for many people to be helped. But I know since all this message has been captured online, there will be many more people who will be able to stream and benefit from this, wisdom that the Golden Ages have shared with us from various aspects of finances and investments. And indeed, when a church is strong, then even the society is strong. And so, Lord, I pray that you may help us at a personal level to embrace the very, advices we have received here on how to deal with our finances. You entrusted us with all the resources, and to expect nothing but to be very prudent in how we manage the resources that you have given us, and that includes our finances. Help us, Lord, right from our families, in church, and in our other aspects of life. Make us good managers, not just in our finances, but in all totality of life, that at the end of it all, we can say the church has mentored people who are qualified stewards to manage the resources that God has given them. Bless the team, give them more opportunity to impact people far and wide, but also bless them right in their homes and what they are doing, and also with the privilege of eternity. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you so much. Thank you.